Hello, my name is Juliana Webb, and my topic was on if driver stress causes an increase in car accidents. I chose this topic for a lot of different reasons. One of them being it is super common for people to get into car accidents. I have been in some, my family's been in some, friends have been in some, distant people have been in some, and I just wanted to know why. And after looking into it, I realized that stress is one of the main reasons. If a driver is under a lot of stress while driving, they will not be able to operate a car effectively. Their mind is going to be on those racing thoughts that they're worried about. They're going to be on a lot of different other things than just the road itself. And so I was really curious to look into this study. So for my first study, the hypothesis was that given that the driver's stress level can be measured by a variety of psychological sensors, is there really a correlation between an increased stress level and a possibility of traffic accident occurring on a given road segment? So basically, what they did was the researchers gathered 6 people, 6 volunteers that were willing to drive around the city in various different kinds of road conditions and different parts of town. Um, and to measure their stress levels during this time to see if certain parts of the city or certain traffic conditions cause them to have more stress. And so they used a lot of different psychological sensors like an EEG to measure brain activity, an electromyogram, an EMG to study muscle activity, the electrodiagram to study heart activity, and a 3D printed headset was attached to the human head. And so the drivers agreed to be recorded by a camera and equipped with those sensors during 20 rides. And the sensors were attached to the drivers so that they wouldn't be distracted from the road, so that wouldn't also be a factor played into the study. Before the drive, all of the drivers were shown the route map and instructed on where to drive, how to drive, and all those things. Um, so they also measured the driver's emotions, only 3 of them, which were disgust, fear, and distress, using the cube of emotions. So the cube of emotions represented a 3-dimensional model for a monoamine neurotransmitter in emotions. So the monoamine systems were represented as orthogonal axes, and the 8 basic emotions are placed at each of the 8 possible extreme values. And so then they ended up finding that there was an increase in distress, there was an increase in fear, there was a decrease in disgust, which I thought was really funny. And the driver reported when the driver was stressed. And so this, in 72% of the cases, the drivers demonstrated an increased stress level when passing through dangerous junctions. And so this study was relevant to my study because my study is based off of stress. So for my second study, their hypothesis was that traffic levels and road types directly affect the driver's stress and therefore the driver safety. So very similar to the last study, except instead of using 6 people, these researchers and doctors monitored a young male for 60 minutes for 21 days. So 60 minutes each day. They measured his electrodermal activity to measure the stress levels and heart rate, and he drove a route from one big city through a highway to another city, and he was familiar with this route. So they were basically just looking and seeing, like, on his normal drive, when did he get the most stressed? Was it on the highway? Was it in one city? Was it in another city? And the results were that the traffic levels and road types played a large part in the driver's stress levels and thereby a large part in safety while driving. study was from a different country. I believe the country was Haman. And I really was interested in doing it in another country just to kind of see if it was just US drivers or if it was just people and humans in general. And so their hypothesis was basically that lifestyle stress was actually the most important factors in road accidents. So more than just stress while driving. And so they took 309 drivers, all ages, all genders, various vehicle types, and people who had and hadn't been in accidents before. They did a basic demographic questionnaire and also analyzed lifestyle related stresses. And then, after this questionnaire was given and administered and finished, they had the participants come back and take the same questionnaire 2 weeks later. The results ended up being that life stresses were 3 times more likely to cause accidents than driving stress. This relates to my study because my study that I'd like to perform measures both life stresses and driving stresses. So my hypothesis is that high stress in drivers increase the risk of car accidents. In this study, I would measure by gathering a group of 50 participants, both male and female, between the ages of 16 and 60. I chose these ages because that's generally the driving ages, and I would require them to have a driver's license because if they didn't have one, then they wouldn't be considered drivers, and then it wouldn't be relevant to my study. I would be using the questionnaire on the computer, so I would probably need about 60 computers. I'd be using a driving simulator and a chest band device to measure their heart rate and my naked eye to measure their sweat. I would start out by giving the participants a survey that asks questions pertaining to their current stress levels, like how often have you felt stress in this past month, this past year, how severe do you feel your stress is, do you struggle with any anxiety disorders or stress disorders of any kind? How long has it been since you've been diagnosed with that disorder? And I would even mention, like, did you notice that has your driving safety has decreased and that you are more likely to get in an accident since you've been diagnosed or since you started noticing that you began this anxiety disorder? Um, and then I would ask about the anxiety disorders because that way I would have like a baseline because I don't expect all of my participants to struggle with an anxiety disorder. And so obviously people with anxiety disorders are more likely to be stressed in all circumstances. And so it would just kind of be a variable to play into my study. That way it doesn't throw my results. Then I would ask questions about their traffic safety, like how many stop signs have you run in the past month? How many times have you almost collided with another vehicle in the past month? How often do you drive when you're stressed? And other things like that. I would probably make this questionnaire anonymous just so that they would be more likely to answer truthfully because not a lot of people would probably answer like, oh yeah, I ran a stop sign like 2 weeks ago. Um, then after the questionnaire, I'd have them go through a driving simulator and conduct 2 different trials. One being a normal day, just driving with no extreme weather conditions, no extreme traffic conditions, and then the next trial would be adding those stressful circumstances, like being on a freeway, construction zones, adding police cars around the area, um, and also high traffic areas and roundabouts. I'd measure the rate of their heart and their sweat, and I'd also note any comments made by the participants themselves, if there were any. It is expected that drivers exhibiting high stress will increase their risk of getting into car accidents. I would expect that when the driver's heart rates go up in the high stress situations, that they'll make riskier decisions, make mistakes while driving, and as well potentially getting into simulated car accidents. Thank you so much.